and welcome to my podcast, Yes Boss, a place where we discuss freelancing, side hustles, online businesses, 9 to 5, and celebrate people who move beyond the ordinary to shine and showcase their talent. Hey guys, welcome back to my next episode on Yes Boss. And today we have somebody really special. So let me ask you a question first. Imagine you are the VP of a company. Imagine you're at a very senior leadership position. What do you do next? A, do you continue to reap the benefits and look forward to growing in your organization? Or B, do you leave everything alone, start something from scratch, something that you have zero idea of, something that scares you, something that excites you? Well, most of us would have chosen A because that is the path we all know, right? The path that we all understand. But today we have Manish with us. He chose path B and he left his corporate job of 20 plus years to start freelancing. Let's get started. Let's get to know him better. Welcome, Manish.
Hi, Aditi. It's a pleasure. Good morning. Okay.
It's lovely to meet you as well. So, okay, tell me something about your background. Where were you born and brought up? How did you end up here? So, tell me something about your story.
Sure. So, I've had a long journey. I was born in Patna in Bihar, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I know a lot of your listeners and even you would not have been born at that time. But that was a very different era, and I was born to a upper middle class, fairly well educated family. And I think the most interesting thing I'll say, Aditi, about maybe my background is that almost nobody in my family had ever got into what I got into, which is the corporate life and all that. So belong to a very sort of government job oriented family, and most people were either in the government job or in teaching, which was I think the biggest chunk. So
Right.
that was my early part, and then I did my early education in Patna, and then I did my MBA from Goa, and then I worked across the country. So I've worked in the southern part of the country, I've worked in the western area, Bombay, Gujarat, then in Delhi, so all across. So that's been really my journey, and currently I'm based out of Delhi.
Right. So you've talked about being a corporate employee, and that was new and that was first. So tell me something. How did you get into sales, and how was your journey like?
So that's exciting and interesting because I actually I I had an idea as to what I don't want to do, which was like I don't want to work with machines and too much of non-human thing, and that's what I want. So I never did engineering,
Right.
and then what I wanted to do was honestly it came a bit later. I wanted to work in something which was to do with people, and when I did my MBA, uh, I got a job into sales, and honestly, Aditi, the initial understanding of selling, and I think you may agree with me, all of us have certain perceptions related to sales as a career and salesman. And my perception was also fairly similar. And I was thinking I was not really made for sales. And I did the job because that's the job I got. But I think as I spent few years in sales, I started realizing that sales is much more about engaging, much more about building connections, and much more about being authentic rather than pushing things or manipulating things, which is the normal thought of selling. And I realized that these are some of the areas I'm naturally good at, and that I think led to one thing led to other, and I think I spent more than 20 years in sales.
Yes, even so, I am a marketing professional, and even
Mm.
my reason for selecting marketing was that I don't want to do sales, because we've grown up hearing that sales is a bad thing. You're being pushy, but that is only because a certain set of people chose to do it that way. But I think the beauty of sales is that everybody needs some things, right? And we are just matching that gap. If your product is good enough and if you're pitching it to people, that is not bad. That is actually what your needs are being met. So, and this took a very long time to change. It takes over years of experience when you realize, and especially when you start getting into freelancing, you realize that it is even more important to sell a
Absolutely.
product, service, and yourself.
Absolutely. So I think the way you look at sales, and I think maybe this is something I like to tell a lot of your listeners that uh, sometimes our perceptions may not be correct. And in life, it is always a good idea to, even if you have certain perceptions about something, for example, sales, or it could be anything. A lot of people also have perceptions related to freelancing or solopreneurship. It may be always a good idea to test your perceptions and check it out in reality in the market by trying out a few things.
Yes.
And most often than not, we will find that maybe our perceptions are not correct. So I think that's something that I have realized over 2 decades of working. That's a
Correct.
lesson.
Absolutely. So now let's get started or into the meaty part of it. So I want to know what made you think of quitting this, obviously high paying, you were in such a respectable position to leave that, take that scary step of going on your own, starting to freelance. What were the thoughts behind doing this? Were you scared? How did you prepare?
Was I scared? Definitely. I think I'd be really lying if I say that I had figured out everything. I was 110% confident. Absolutely not. I This thought came to me obviously a couple of years back, and but it was more a thought. I'm sure a lot of us have these thoughts, but it almost took me about 2 years, to be honest, Aditi, before I actually took the leap. So number A, yes, I was scared. Did it take time? Yes, it did took time. But I think what's more important, and I think what really worked for me and what my thought was that these 2 years I mulled over a lot of things. I also did a lot of things, and uh, ultimately, to answer your question, why I chose it, because what I realized is that I have had my run at the corporate. I started off as a very entry level executive, and now as a VP and a senior director. So I guess the way I looked at it is I had my run. I was fairly successful, and in the next phase of my life, looking at my age and what I wanted to do, I was very clear that I wanted a life wherein I have more work-life balance. I do things which I really want to do. I don't do things which I don't want to do. I also have a freedom and time and space of where what I work. And Aditi, you've also been a corporate employee. You realize that some of these things are not possible at a corporate environment. Uh,
Absolutely.
and and then that's when I realized that if these are my whys and this is what I want to do, maybe I need to choose a different path.
Correct.
And that's when freelancing or solopreneurship came in as a thought. I was definitely scared, as I said, so I did my own calculations, planning and stuff and all that. You can never be 100% sure. And
Correct.
ultimately, it was a leap of faith, which I did.
Yes, yes. Leap of faith. Perfect word. I think that is what you actually take. So I'm going to pick on one thought which you said that, it was brewing in your head for about 2 years before you made that decision. So, a lot of people nowadays that I talk with, clients and all of that, they say that I am not liking my corporate job and hence I'll leave. While that is a good enough reason to start that, there are a lot of things that are not working for you. It could be work life balance, time, work, etc. But I think it's very important to think it through as well. Well, there is definitely that, spontaneity in decision that you do, but managing finances, talking, getting ready for the worst case scenario of probably not earning enough or not earning at all for a few months, because that salary is a drug, right? So, your thoughts on this as well?
No, I totally second it, and I think very rightly you said. It's one thing to romanticize a lot of these things, but I think there is a practical side to it. So, and I think one point which you very nicely picked up is a lot of people want to do this because they are very dissatisfied in the job. So while that could be the catalyst, at least in my opinion, if you are if you're trying to do something or getting into something like a freelancing just because your job is not good, your boss is not good, you may really have a tough time uh, because freelancing is no easy buddy. It takes its own time, it has its own set of challenges, and uh, uh, it's important to be very, very clear about what you are getting into.
Right.
And I always say doing something because you are pushed into that versus doing something because something is really pulling you from inside. There is
Absolutely.
a difference. And I think you very rightly put, I totally agree with it. So I think it has to be a thought through thing. Taking a calculated risk, I think, is the key word I would say here.
Yes, absolutely. In everything, a calculated risk is much. It could be your investment, it could be your life, any decisions that actually helps. So let's move on to a little more interesting thing now. So, what are the type of projects? What are the depth of projects that you've been taking up post your corporate stint? So, I believe it's been about 6, 7 months that you have gone full time, right? So, what are the types of projects? What are the types of clients that you're meeting and speaking with?
So it's been pretty interesting journey, Aditi. I think what has really, if you ask me today, what I'm most happy about is the type of work that I have got so far. And while it may not be like too much in terms of quantity, but I think the quality has been really good. So some of the interesting things I have been doing is I work broadly in two areas. One is the sales mentoring, sales coaching, which is primarily the domain that I come from. And second is career coaching for mid-career professionals. So I think in both these areas, I have got some interesting assignments. So I've worked with people at, let's say, an AVP, VP level, helping them sort of think through their next move in life. And I think those have been very satisfying. I've worked with, incidentally, this may be of interest to you, a lot of my clientele is women. That's not really by sort of design, but that is what has happened. So I've worked with a lot of senior women leaders, and they have had their own challenges in terms of work-life balance and how to really look at a CXO level role. And I think that's been very immensely satisfying work. And then on the sales coaching side, I have worked with people at diverse, like I work with creators, I work with business owners, I have worked with people in the social media space, and also regular sales professionals to sort of help them build their right sales mindset and skills. And I
Right.
think the biggest thing is the impact when I hear people come back and say that it has really helped them in their job, in their work, and they're seeing improvement. I think that's the best satisfaction that you get.
Right. So yes, I have been seeing your stories that you've been posting, your testimonials and all of that. It's really nice and lovely. But I'm slightly inclined to
Hmm.
talk more about the women mentoring that you're doing, and I think that's really great because in my experience, in what I've seen with my friends and colleagues, there is definitely a glass ceiling for women. It probably is starting to break right now. It probably is, lesser differentiated against, but uh, women in general or traditionally have been known to be a little soft spoken or not too salesy in the particular term of the word. But I think women are taking that up right now, putting up that mantle, going ahead, being in sales. So, how have you seen a difference or change in, earlier when you worked with colleagues, or did you have colleagues earlier, maybe 15, 20 years back to now? There must be a pronounced difference right now.
No, that's a very interesting observation, Aditi. Yes, I would say since I've had a fairly long span of career, I definitely, one thing in sales, unfortunately, even today, there are less women, fairly less women in sales, and that was the case a long time back. But I think with the advent of technology, more information, better education. Definitely, there are more confident women, and I'll say you are one example. The way you are shaping your career and that you are building it. So I definitely see more women coming in the workforce and also rising up. Having said that, yes, there are. You spoke about glass ceilings, and the way I look at it, and maybe this is my way, is there are two glass ceilings. One is in the mind of the woman, and
Yes.
and and one is actually the glass ceiling which is outside. So I believe sometimes in my work with various women professionals, I've seen that it is also our own perception of a lot of things. And some women who have been able to break that, and both me and you know a lot of such women, right? We both work with them and all. They have really they've really scaled, right? Because they broke their own mental barriers, and they dreamt big, and they've created very good institutions. So I think that's very important. And then there is obviously the social side of it. Within men are there, they have biases, and there are biases related to women and all, which I think is a work in progress. I don't think it's a perfect society. A lot needs to be done. I'm happy I'm contributing in that, and I guess yeah, things will only improve.
Absolutely. And I really loved your thought on when you said that there is one glass ceiling that exists in the mind. That's so true. That, the first thing is we limit ourselves in our mind, and then there is the world that's doing it. So
Yeah.
great thought. Like I probably, one of the highlights of this episode today. So moving on, we glamorize success and it's all going really well and all of that happens. But can you talk a little bit about your failures, like, moments where you had self-doubt, moments where you had like, should I be doing this? I could be making more than enough money on my job. Can you tell me something around that?
Absolutely. So I think again, self-doubt, I think is fairly normal. I am not one of those people who will say you should never have self-doubt, because I don't think that's humanly possible. All of us have doubts, including me. It's how we manage it. And so maybe there's something that I read which says that what is courage? And courage is not absence of fear. Courage is actually walking in spite of your fear. So that's typically what it is. So I think I obviously had my moments of self-doubt. I have had peers who are obviously in the corporate journey, and they're doing very well in terms of making the sort of money. But I guess my go-to thing, Aditi, in that has been that whenever I have had self-doubts, or whenever I've thought that, okay, am I doing the right thing? I go back to the whys that I spoke to you about. My why I actually chose it. And if I look at that list, making a lot of money was not in that list.
Right.
So I think I'm very clear. If making a lot of money was my primary driver, I would have actually remained in corporate.
Yeah.
Right. But at this stage, and I'm very particular when I say at this stage, that's where I generally don't like a lot of free advice that goes on in the net where everybody should become a freelancer, everybody. I think it's all our own choice at what life stage they are in.
Yes.
At my life stage, for me, money is important. I will never deny the importance of money. However, is it the only primary driver? No, not for me. It may be, let's say, fifth on the priority. I need to definitely make a certain amount of money, which thankfully I am through my freelancing business also. But there are other things important. So when I go at my why and I see, am I aligning my work to that? I think that sort of helps me solve those doubts.
Absolutely agree. And I love that quote. So even I feel like that, like, either doing this along with my work or eventually moving out or doing that, entirely might be really scary. But the thing is that if you have that purpose of like, something that you really want to do and really enjoy doing, I think you can sustain it because I have been reading a lot and like everywhere it says that if you can sustain a business for more than 1 to 2 years just by that being consistent you can still make it through. So that first, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think just to add that one bit what you said, in fact, if you can sustain by, let's say, 1 year, 2 year, or three, many times success is a lot about playing, being there on the playground, as I say. A
Yes.
lot of people leave the playground too early.
Correct.
So if you leave the playground, your obviously chances of success is zero.
Correct.
If you are there, as they say in the cricket, right? So if you're there in the crease, then only you can make 100. If you're not there at the crease, then there is no way you can. So yeah, totally agree with you, Aditi.
Yes, and it also might come at like like even I have that there are months where I have not had anything, any money, any projects come in, and it's very easy to just leave that and go back to what you were doing. But just sticking it through, because it's like a game of up and down, trough and crest and all of that. So ultimately that line is going forward. It's just that ups and downs together that we need to combine. So yes, lovely thought. Let's move on to the next question. The next question I have for you, Manish, is that from the time you started freelancing, what are some of the achievements that are really close to you?
Yeah, interesting. I think some of the, if I look back, some of the most satisfying experiences I've had is with working with a set of people who had a completely and this I'm coming from the sales coaching side here. I've worked with a lot of people who when they came to me had a completely different view related to selling and their own abilities related to selling. And when I worked with them over a period of 1 to 3 months or so, uh, after them, when I hear from them or when I see them, like I'll give you an example. There's this senior lady who I coached, and she actually runs her own firm. And when she came to me sometime in January, her perception of selling was completely different. And today, I see her going so confident out selling, and she has
Right.
been able to sell things related to her company so well. I see her on social media, I see her on conferences, and I think that's really really very satisfying because you can see your work being translated into impact on the ground. So I think that's one, and there's one more which I'll highlight is I've had the occasion of working with a team of very senior women leaders of a large tech company, one of the largest in the world.
Right.
And and these women are, let's say, around 15, 20, 25 years experience, very qualified, very technically, very good. And and when you spoke to them, when you worked with them, you realize that they had so many self-doubts and so many perceptions. And then after you've done some intervention with them, when you see them again rethinking, and it is very important because when you become very senior, when you have around 15, 20 years of experience, it is very tough to change your mind at that age, right?
Yes.
And to be able to do that in some with some people, I think that's very satisfying, and that's I think maybe two things that come to my mind.
Absolutely. So let me so we are moving towards the end of the episode, and let me break down my last question for you in two parts. So one of it is that how and what have you or what was the learning? How did you learn more about freelancing? How did you dive deep into it? What were the skills that you practiced, learned, and you continue to do it? And the second part of the question is that what would be three tips for people who listen in right now for this episode, or who will come in later on? So anybody who's starting their freelancing journey, what would be your tips for them?
So I think to the first part of your question, for me, I think this entire digital space was very new. I really didn't had any idea. And obviously, given my age, the time when I started working and all, there was nothing digital, right? So, so this is a very new thing for me. So I think way back about a couple of years back, for me, I think the biggest learning was to at least understand this digital medium of, let's say, blogging or even things like social media and content and this entire game. Like you guys are obviously very good in all that, but for me, it was to really pick that thing up. And at that point of time, I came across Saloni Srivastava,
Right,
right?
right.
And I think you also know her, and you've
Yes.
been associated with her.
Yeah.
And I actually saw her some of her videos, and she runs this academy called Hustle Post. And so I loved her approach and all, and I actually took that program, which I think was very important for me to at least for somebody like me to sort of get an hang of an understanding. of what this digital medium is. So I think that was one very key skill that I sort of learned, understood the technology, understood how this works and operates. That also gave me a lot of confidence that maybe, yeah, this is something that I may like to do. And on the second part, in terms of what would be my, let's say, three things, I would say 3C. So I'm the corporate guy, so I'll try to break down into some 3A, 3B, 3C. So I'll say 3Cs. Uh, the first I will say is curiosity. It's always good to be curious. Uh, Curious about what's happening. So for me, it worked, and I realized that the world is changing. There is a digital shift happening.
Yes.
And since I was curious, I sort of figured out, okay, there is somebody who can help me. So I found out and then I learned. So that's where curiosity comes in. When you're curious, you know, you can see the signs early and you can pick up things. So that's, I think, very important. If you want to grow as a freelancer, you need to be curious. You need to be ready to learn. That's extremely important. That's one. The second is also in terms of what I will say collaboration. So I think one mistake a lot of people who get into freelancing make, I think, is they think everything they have to do is on your own. Well, the fact really is that there is always a network, right? So if you reach out to people, you don't have to do everything together, right? You can, even for getting business, you can collaborate with other people, right? You can become empaneled with some people. So I think the power of collaboration is underrated. I would say, like we both are part of this community, right? And in that community itself, you see how we collaborate with each other. Even this
Absolutely.
podcast that me and you are doing,
It's a product of getting
it's a
people from
product
that
of
community.
collaboration, right? So I'm not producing this podcast, but I'm coming to you, right? And tomorrow maybe you will come to something that I am doing, and
Right.
I think that's very important. So I think the second C is collaboration, believing that there is a community, there is a collaboration. And I think third, and I think I cannot overemphasize, is taking calculated risk. So calculated risk is the third C. I think so I have this framework. This is something which I believe in, that you will never have 100% clarity that your decision is going to be correct. So I call it as a 70% rule. So I believe if you are 70% sure that something is going to work out, and this could be 70, 75, but if you are reasonably sure or 70% sure, and then you should go ahead and do things. So take that calculated risk. In life, without taking certain risks, growth doesn't happen. So you need to go out of the comfort zone. So I think all the three C's, I think, is what I would say people should try and do.
You've spoken like a true corporate. I remember that, every strategy that we do, it has to have a framework. So, but very useful and important. I agree on all of these. Um, I remember that, Saloni's community that we are a part of. I have been doing this podcast, like, as just informational first few episodes. And while it was interesting, but I was losing interest because I was speaking to a blank screen, right? Nobody to have a conversation with. But when I started interacting with people, I can't tell you, like, even today, after speaking to you, like, it's so motivating that actually the entire day I work harder because the stories that come out are so powerful and inspirational. So I think it's really, really nice to have this curiosity and collaboration, because that is extremely needed if you want to start off on your own to figure out stuff. On that note, one more thing for people listening in is that Manish said that he had no idea about social media, right? But he's been acing Instagram and LinkedIn, but specifically Instagram, where he's gained more than 9,000 followers in a very, very short amount of time. So basically, if we break down the virality of his content, it is because of, very relatable content, extremely down to earth, that, there is no sort of show off in what you are doing. It's relatable when somebody might get inspired to take that action. And of course, the tips that you share or the content that you share is very actionable. We learn from it. So no wonder the growth of your channel that we have seen. So it's really nice to see when you say that, you started late, but another takeaway from that is that it's never too late to start. Like what people have taken years to do, you've done it in 6 months, 8 months. So that's again another lovely takeaway from this episode as well.
I think you nailed it. I think it's never late to start. It's never late to, I would say it's never late to trust yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, and maybe you are doing it. I think a lot of other people are also doing it, and I think we
Yes.
are all on our journey. And I think maybe just one final thing I like to add is maybe another C to it is don't compare.
Yeah.
So for example, my journey is different. Your journey is different. Sometimes we get into this comparison trap
Yeah.
that I'm not like that person or I'm not growing like that person. All
Yeah.
of us are on our own journey,
Yes.
right? And I think comparison really kills. So what I've learned as a coach, what I've learned as a professional is that let's compete with our own selves and not just with any other. I think there's enough space in this world for everyone. I believe in the concept of abundance, and I think if you are good, if you are consistent, as you said in one of the points that if you are there in the game, if you are
Yes.
then I think it's matter of time how ahead we go. I think that's most critical.
Yeah, like they say, it's not if, it's when you will
Yeah,
finally get the success. So,
absolutely.
on that note, I'll quickly summarize a few pointers to learn from this episode. The first is that there is no age and bar to start what you want or to do what you love. The second thing is, if you're curious and if you're willing to learn, even if it means you're learning from somebody who's younger to you or somebody who's older than you, right? It doesn't matter. If somebody knows more than you learn with an open heart and an open mind. If you're humble, down to earth, if you're connected with the masses, if you're connecting with people, and if you learn the art of selling, nothing is impossible. You can achieve all that you want. And success is not very far away. You have to just be consistent. Thank you so much, Manish, for joining this session today. It lovely conversations. It was so great to have you, so great to learn from you. And this episode will also stay very close to my heart because we have formed a good friendship over our course of learning, and hopefully this collaboration we can also take it forward, and hopefully people listening in can take tips and take that step, take that decision and get started.
Lovely chatting, Aditi. I appreciate your opportunity. I think always good to firstly talk to you. And I think yeah, if this episode, if anything in this episode sort of helps even one person, I'll be very happy. I think great connecting with you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening in. Signing off.